So in December, a viewer actually came forward and asked me to make a video to cover Uptime-Kuma, which I was actually very excited about. However, I couldn't get the container working on a MikroTik device, so I kind of just abandoned the project. However, I did receive a notification from another viewer that they posted on the MikroTik forums, and MikroTik actually posted a slight workaround to get the container working. I've tested it out and it works perfectly. So in this video, we will be looking at how to install Uptime-Kuma as a container on a MikroTik device, and it's going to be awesome. So hope you enjoy. So what is Uptime-Kuma? Well, in essence, it is a monitoring robot. It will let you know if anything happens on your network, your servers, or even your website. It is completely open source, and it was developed by Louis Lamb as a bit of a project for himself because he couldn't find what he was looking for, so he just made it himself. And it's crazy how fancy and modern Uptime-Kuma is, and all of the features that you get with it. You can even do stuff like create status pages that people can view to see specifically what's happening with the network, and it's so cool. And it also allows you a way of automatically pushing notifications to stuff like Discord, Slack, text messaging, Telegraph, email. There's various different ways that you can actually get notified if an issue occurs on the network, which I love. One more thing to take note of is this isn't limited to just MikroTik. You could install Uptime-Kuma on any type of server or Linux-based host. If you have some Raspberry Pi lying around, you could install Uptime-Kuma on that using something like Docker and Docker Compose, and it would work just as well. Personally, I just love the idea of having this mega router that has all of these networking functions, that it can do all of these cool things. So let's actually go about installing the Uptime-Kuma container on a MikroTik. So firstly, let's just make sure that our device is capable of running containers. So to do this, we can just navigate into our terminal and we can do a system device mode print. It will tell us container yes. If it says no or nothing there, what you could do to enable this is just run a system device mode update container equals yes. When you hit enter, it will ask you that you need to hard reset the device, which in essence means pull the power completely. When you power it back on, it will boot up in a way of using containers. Very important. If you don't do this, containers won't work. And again, this is only going to be for your x86s, your CHRs, or your ARM or ARM64 architecture. Anything older, unfortunately, you're not going to be doing containers. Next step is actually downloading the package from MikroTik. Now, I've already got the package installed. If I go to my system and packages, I have a container package. Now, you can get the container package by going to the MikroTik website, going to the software, and then from the software, you can navigate to your specific architecture. So in my case, it is an x86. If you download the extra packages, you will find the container package in there. From there, it's just a case of copying the container image or the file into your MikroTik in its file system. So you just copy, drag, drop it in here, reboot the MikroTik. When it boots back up, it will have container functionality, namely this little tab at the bottom left that says container. If you click on this, it will open up the container magic. So from here, you can actually install or pull containers. You can configure stuff, namely like mounts, and here I see I have a mount that I'm just going to delete because we're going to do that ourselves just now. But in essence, mounts allow you a way of specifying stuff like certain directories to write data that the app wants to use, that the container wants to use. It might be some database type traffic where it wants to store information. So this is very useful for us, especially with Uptime-Kuma. And then you have stuff like environment variables, which allows you a way of changing some of the details in the container. Maybe you want to update the password, or you want to change a port of the device. Not all containers have environment variables that you can change, but in essence, sometimes you will see it in the documentation that they say, hey, use this variable, then you can change these details on the container, which is really nice. Now, first thing that we need now after the containers is a network to actually run stuff on. Now, this is what I'm going to call my container network. And if I look at my bridges, you will see I actually have a bridge called Dockers, and within the Dockers there's these ports, and these ports are all virtual Ethernet interfaces that the containers use as their NICs. It's how they obtain IP addresses, it's how they connect to the MikroTik, to each other, and even to the internet. Very important to take note of that. So if I go to my interfaces, you can see there is a vEth tab, or you can just click on this drop down and you can click on vEth. This is how we can add a new virtual Ethernet interface for our containers. Now I need a new interface for my Uptime-Kuma container, so I will add it so long. what I tend to do is I just leave the veth name, whatever it is. So veth6 in this case, I'll give it a little dash and I'll give it a description of what it is, like Kuma. So now I know this is for the Kuma container. My address will be the IP address that the container will use. So I will just statically assign this as 10.0.0.10/24, and my gateway is going to be 10.0.0.1, which is the Docker bridge interface IP address. I'll show that to you now as well. So if I hit apply, I will have this new interface which has been created, and we can see it is just in the R state because I haven't set it into that bridge yet. So if I go to my bridges, in my ports, I can just hit the plus and I can add my Kuma to the Docker's bridge. If I hit apply, the Kuma interface is now added to the Docker's bridge. And again, what I mentioned was if I go into my IP addresses, you will see that the IP of 10.0.0.1/24 is assigned to my Dockers. So this now allows my containers network access, which is really useful. So now let's actually install the containers since we have our network portion set up. So to do this, I'll just navigate back to the containers boxes or container field. And another thing, just make sure in your config, these are also important details to set, the registry URL in essence is where it will be downloading containers from if you use the remote image method. And in this case, it is https://registry-1.docker.io. So this allows you to pull images from the Docker hub. Second thing is the disk1/pull. This is just where it's going to be pulling images temporarily while it's extracting it so that it can be installed on your mic. So just make sure these details are there so that you can actually install your containers. So let's actually install Kuma now. So we're nearly ready to bring our container online, but first thing we want to set is a mount for our container. So I'm going to go into the mounts tab, I'll click on the plus, and then from here we can give it a name. So I'll just call this Kuma. My source will be disk1/Kuma_data. So think of this as locally where I'm going to be storing this information on my MikroTik, and destination is what I'm going to be pulling from the container in essence. And this is going to be app/data. I will hit apply. And now we have our mount configured. So with the mount, we can now add our container. So I'll go back to the container tab, click on the plus. We can specify a remote image. What do we specify? How do we get this image? Well, if I go into my browser, we can actually go onto the hub.docker.com and then you can search for Uptime-Kuma. So Uptime-Kuma, and you should find it with the first hit, the Lewis Lamb one. If I go in here, we can now find the tag that we can use, which is Lewis Lamb/Uptime-Kuma. So I'll just copy this. I'll go back onto my MikroTik and I'll paste it in here. Our interface, I'm going to set this as my Kuma interface that I configured earlier. Then I need to specify my root directory. Now this can be an external drive, for example, if you don't have enough space on your actual MikroTik because you've added an external drive, but I'm just going to make this disk1/Kuma. I've actually got quite a beefy CHR or x86 on my virtual network, so I'm not too worried about space. And now our mounts, we just need to set that Kuma mount that we created. I will enable logging and I will click on apply. Now once I click on apply, it will now actually be pulling the container off of hub.docker.com and it will extract it. So now we're actually just waiting for this image to be installed and we will see it's finished when the status is done. So I'm just going to pause the video here. All right, now we are in our final steps to actually get this working. We can see the status is stopped. We can see our architecture is AMD 64 and the OS is Linux. So I'm actually quite happy with this so far. So my issue before was whenever we try to start this container, if I click on start, you'll see it goes running and then it immediately goes stop. And I want to go into the logs quickly because we did enable logging. And if we look here, it will give us an app.data/.type operation not permitted. So it's freaking out about something. And this is where MikroTik's Anton actually came in with a workaround, which I really appreciate. Thank you, MikroTik and Anton. You guys are awesome when you suggested this, and I couldn't believe this worked when I tested it out myself. But if you actually log onto your MikroTik via its FTP system, this .type file, you can actually just delete that and the container works fine afterwards. So let's quickly do that. So I'm just going to go onto my actual Linux machine now. I'm going to go into my terminal. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to SFTP as admin onto my MikroTik's IP, which I actually think is 192.168.149.132, and I'll just log in with my password. Now I'm in SFTP, so I'm just going to change directory to disk1, which is that directory we added, and then there is a Kuma_data, which is where it's complaining about that file. Now if I look here, we should see there is a .type file and it is actually hidden. So this is where you can't just normally find it. There is actually one line command you can use to just delete this, but I want to show you guys the process and the steps. So from here we can just remove this .type file. Once that's done, I can quit out of SFTP, and if I minimize that and I close my log window and I try and start the container again, let's see what happens. Running, and it's not going into a stop state. So this means we are actually off to a great start. So let's actually see if it's working by navigating onto Kuma on our browser. So all I'm going to do is go onto my browser, and then from here I will just type in the IP address that I gave the container, which was 10.0.0.10 on colon port 3001. If you look at the documentation, you will see it also tells you to connect on 3001. If I go back here, it is going to be on HTTP Uconnect. So once I hit enter, it's going to ask me what's your language. I'm going to leave it as English. You can set a username, so I'll make it the network Berg, and then you can set your own password. Once you click create, you will be inside Uptime-Kuma. Now the fun starts. Now we can actually start adding our monitoring and make this awesome solution work on our MikroTik. So a few things to take note of is we can see nothing is configured at the moment, so we won't actually see anything. No monitors, please add one. So let's quickly add a monitor. How to do this is we can just click on the plus on add new monitor, and there are various different ways that you can set your monitors, your sensor, so to speak. So if you click on this drop down box, here are your general types that you can use. You've got your HTTP, where it will just see if a site is up, if it gets a certain response back from the site. You've got TCP ports that you can use. You can use ping. You can use HTTP with a keyword, which is so cool and crazy because it will in essence go to the site and see if the word exists on the site. You can check stuff like DNS. It's really, really, really awesome. But let's just start off with a very basic ping, because people like to just do ping. You can give it a friendly name, and this is just a description that you can see on the dashboard. So let's call this maybe Google, and our host name is now going to be the Google DNS server 8888. This is a pretty basic sensor that I think a lot of people tend to use. We can set a heartbeat interval, retry times before it says that it's actually down, before it sends a notification, because maybe you know that it is you've got some type of wireless link, and maybe sometimes a packet does drop here and there. So maybe you just want to set that for 3 retries before it marks it as down. And then we can also do stuff like an upside down mode, which is just in reverse. So if it's up, it will mark it as down. It's pretty crazy, but don't worry too much about the upside down mode. And then we can add some tags. Now tags are obviously nice because it just gives you that color coding of where what device is. So I might just call this tag internet, and then any internet facing services I will just mark with this tag. I will give it the blue color, and I will save this. Once this is saved, automatically we can see the sensor for Google comes up. It is pinging 8888, and we can see what it's doing. So it will tell you if it's up, what the time is. There's a nice little response graph here. You can even go back quite a while. You can clear your data, but I'm not going to clear any data. And it's nice because it will give you messages if something happens, if something breaks, if something becomes unreachable, which I really, really, really appreciate. Now that we have one monitor, how about we add another monitor? So let's maybe add something like the HTTP one, and we can give it a friendly name. And this I'm going to call my EveNG because it's my EveNG server. And now we can specify the URL. So in my case, the URL is https://192.168.149.200, and I can leave the heartbeat, in this case, whatever it is currently. And here we can see we do have a few extra options with advanced. You can check for certificate expiry notification, so it will tell you if a SSL cert might be expiring. And you can also do stuff like ignore TLS/SSL, so that if there's an error with the cert, that it won't be marked as down, which I'm actually going to leave like this for now because it's going to mark it as down even though I know EveNG is up. So let me hit save. Oh wait, let's just go over the accepted status quotes quickly as well. So these are just HTTP codes. You've got 200, 300, 400, 500, 100, etc. So anything in the 200 range is typically when things are fine. Your 400 is typically when there's an issue on your side with your machine, and then 500 would be a server side issue. You can have a look at the HTTP codes because it is a general IT thing. It's not just for Kuma or monitoring or anything. It's more related to how sites work. But we will leave it as 200 because 200 is typically what a site will send back to you when you connect and everything is successful. So we're happy with that. Let's just give it the same tag as internet, so I can just select it from here. Actually, no, let's give it a new tag. So I'm going to cancel that, add a new tab. How do I, there we go, remove. As you see, That's how new I am to adding the tag. So let's add a tag and call this lab. And this I'm going to mark as red. So this I know is going to be part of my lab infrastructure. So I can save this and we can see it there. Now I can see that EVNG self-signed certificate, that is down. So if I look at my logs here, we can actually see that the sensor is technically up, but it's a self-signed certificate. So if I edit this and I just ignore the TLS SSL error, and I save it again, we'll see that it comes up. And if I go back to my dashboard, how nice is that? We can see there we get that 200-OK. It is up, and we know that it was down, but due to a self-signed certificate. So it is actually up, everything is working, and now we can see 2 of our hosts are up and running. Let's maybe add another monitor for our MikroTik now. So I'll make this one ping again. Let's just call this my MikroTainer, which is the MikroTik this device connects on. I can give it the hostname IP. So I can either give it its WAN IP of the MikroTik, or I can make it the 10, but that would be weird making it the 10.0.0.1 since it's the container. So if this MikroTik dies, everything dies. But I think the point that I want to make is if we can monitor different parts of our network, it also just gives us a little bit of extra foresight. So let's say it was a separate MikroTik, it was something else in my lab, or an Eve device or router. We could set it up like this as well. So I'll just also make this lab facing, and I'll just save this. And there we go. So now we have a bunch of different sensors where we're monitoring Google, we're monitoring an EVNG site, we're monitoring MikroTainer. So let's just add one more sensor actually using a host name, and let's maybe use that keyword as well. So I'll add a new monitor. I'll use the HTTPS keyword. We can give it a friendly name. So maybe I will make this the Firefox 200. And if I go to my URL, I actually had this developer.mozilla.org URL earlier. It's just to test, just to basically explain what a 200 OK is as well. And here we can look for specific details. So maybe I want to look for not just 200 OK, let's maybe search for something else. How about browser compatibility? That's a weird thing to say, but let's just use that. And the search is case sensitive. Again, so what this does, it actually loads up the website. It will be like a person browsing it. It will look for a specific word that we specified just to verify the site is actually working, and that's it. Click on save. We can see it is added successfully, and OK keyword is found. So now we know it as actually able to see the keyword as well, which is nice to an extent as well, because I know back in the day when sites used to get hacked, hackers might have changed the homepage, they changed the details, things just change and the site's not yours anymore. One day you've got your nice website, the next day it's a crypto bro scam site, and it doesn't have that keyword anymore. So this is also a great way to just maybe get a notification if something fishy is happening on any given website. Now, what happens if I change that keyword? What will happen if I change this to something random? So let's just type something random. If I save this, oh, and let's also just give it an internet facing tag. So when I save this, we should see, hey, this goes down. So that is awesome. So if I look at my dashboard, I've got all of these messages. I can see what has happened on the network. We're using IPs, we're using DNS, we're using websites. Everything's working the way we want. I love it. This is so cool, modern, and fleshed out. But now we only know how to monitor the sensors. How about we want to get notified? How do we get notified? So if I go into just a specific sensor, and I press the edit button, we will see there is a setup notification. Now we can set up various notifications. What I'm going to use is I'm just going to go onto my actual profile on the top right, go into the settings, and if we go into the notifications bar, we can now set here some details like how we want to get notified. Now I'm going to use a Discord bot almost to get notified. So if I have Discord installed on my phone and I have this Discord server on the phone, I can actually get these notifications to see what's happening. So let's set up notification. And again, here you can see there's various different ways to get notified. You've got so many things: Slack, Microsoft Teams, Telegram, but I'm going to use Discord. So Discord, I can give it a friendly name. So my Discord alert seems fine. I'll leave it as that. Now we need to set the Discord webhook URL. So think of this as a fancy way of just to integrate your application with Discord or whatever means that you want to use. It is also going to be very important. I'm going to open up Discord, and I want to stress something with you guys, that I have created a custom server which is void. There's nothing going on in here, because webhooks can also be a double-edged sword almost, because if I right click on this notifications channel and I edit the channel and I go to integrations, we can see there is a webhook currently. Now this webhook is going to allow this Captain Hook box, so to speak, to post in the server. So if I go in here, I can copy the webhook URL, and by that it's not too bad. But if somebody gets a hold of your webhook URL, they can use it to maliciously post stuff. So please make sure you keep your webhook secure. Don't just share stuff like I'm pasting here in here. You can see I've got this whole code here. The reason I'm not worried is because that is a burn server. I'm going to just kill the server after this demonstration, so that's fine for me, but make sure that you stay secure whenever you're configuring these details. Now we can give the bot a name even. I'll just leave it as Uptime-Kuma. I can give it a custom message, so hello at everyone, or you can make it at specific people like at network engineers or network admins or server engineers or admins or whatever, so that they can see the special message. But I'll just leave this as hello. And what's nice is we can now set additional features where we can say default enabled. So any new sensors that we add will by default have this notification attached to it. And we can also even apply it on all existing monitors. So let's do that as well. I'm going to save this. And now that that's been saved, we can actually test it out. So let's go back into the notification. I can just click on edit here. And if I click on test, cool, I heard that Discord message. So if I look at the Discord server, I should see my Discord alert testing. Awesome. So we know that the bot is able to actually send messages now to Discord to let us know what's happening. So let me close this and let's actually test this in the event of something going down. So let's maybe go into my Eve server. Let's edit something. Let's break something. So let's just maybe make a bit of a typo, or actually let's just change the code. Let's say it's actually looking for a 500 code now, which means that stuff's broken, but it's not going to receive the 500 because the server is actually up and working fine. But there we can see something went down. So if I look at my dashboard, something went down. But if I go onto Discord, whoa, I get a cool, crazy notification to say, hello, your service EveNG went down. What's the service name? What's the URL? When it went down? What the error is. How freaking cool is that? And the nice thing is, if the service comes back up, it will also let us know that. So if I go back into EveNG, I edit this, and let's just change that code back to 200, and let's just save this. Whoa, I love it. I love it. This is so cool. So now it's telling us that our service has restored, and this is so fast. It's in real time. There's no email I'm waiting for. There's no scripts that needs to run. It's just like instantaneously that I'm getting these notifications that stuff is working, or it's up, it's down, whatever's happening on the network or the servers or the websites, it's just letting me know. How cool is that, guys? So one more thing that I want to cover with Uptime-Kuma, well, there's a couple of things we can quickly go through. If I go to the settings as well, there's other stuff that you can add here like reverse proxies. Another cool feature is with the security, you can even enable 2FA, so multi-form factor authentication. It's all there. And again, this is a single person that made all this stuff for us. You look at the about, backups. It's crazy. It's really, really crazy. And I want to now show you guys just the status page. So if we go to our status page, this allows us a means of administrators to also give a nice little status page that people can go to if they want to see if something's happening. Even for us, we can load this up on our phone and then see what's going on. So if I add a new status page, I can just call this my status, and I'll just call this TMB Kuma. This slug is basically just a subdirectory, so you can have multiple different statuses that you can share with different people so that they can only see certain parts if you only want to have them have access to certain parts. So let's go on to next. And now from here, first thing I want to do is just switch this to dark mode, so it looks a bit easier on the eyes. We can now add our groups or our monitors. So let's add our monitors. I will add all of them quickly. So Google, Eve, MikroTik, Firefox, great. And here it picks up partially degraded service because it sees something is down. And that is so sweet. That is so awesome. I'm just going to save this. And what I want to do is actually just copy the status page and go onto this from my actual Windows computer. So just give me a second. So from my Windows computer, if I open this status page, and again, this could be just a normal person, they can go here and they can see, hey, there is a partially degraded service. The Firefox stuff is down. How neat is that? And you can even add custom messages. So if I edit my status page, I can create an incident. I can give it different colors. So primary green should be good. Info is blue. We have warning, orange, red, danger, you know, different types of things that we can post to people so that they can see it. So I can do an info one maybe, and I can say EveNG server maintenance. Server will be rebooted at whatever time. And if I post this and I save it, and let's go back to my Windows computer, let's just refresh the page, we can see a notification because the admin told us there's going to be something happening. And in the same breath, if you edit it, you can change this to something else. We can make it a danger. We can even say here, internet down. It was BGP. Let's post that and save it. And again, if we refresh the page, we get a nice little update on what's happening. So I really like this status page feature as well. And there's so much more, all of these little things, but I really find it so fascinating that we have all these tools at our disposal for free using Uptime-Kuma and even containers on MikroTik. I love it, and I can't not use it. I'm going to keep using this in my own network and my own projects. So tell me, are you going to use Uptime-Kuma in your networks? How do you feel about this? Did you enjoy the video? And yeah, this is where we're going to be signing off. I'd like to thank everybody for watching, as well as my YouTube and Patreon members, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. See ya.